Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Hall, but you may call me Dr. Kennard. This is the Disappointed Cat Morning Show. And friends, fellow cats, kittens, there's so many things to talk about, right? The Red Sox beat the Yankees last night. I'd like to talk about that. At least, I guess I just did. I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about this woman, Senator Kristen Sinema, over in Arizona. I wrote a little blog post about her today, a satirical piece. But instead, we could talk about other things like the Taiwan defense minister saying that China, mainland China, is probably going to invade Taiwan by 2025. We could talk about the economy and what's going on in China right now and about the crazy president over there. But instead, what do we have to spend our valuable bandwidth on? This story right here. You know, I was going to say I should do some kind of trigger warning because you would think this story would be the thing that gets you really angry, and it will. But the second story we're doing about the Catholic Church in Canada, that might just get you angrier. Maybe, perhaps. Buckle up, everyone. It's going to be a crazy 25 minutes. Let's dive in. French church abuse. 216,000 children were victims of clergy. Thus saith the inquiry. This is the story that we talked about yesterday about the big dump of information that was forthcoming. Well, guess what? The forthcoming is now here. Incoming? It's now here. This is from BBC News. Links are in the description because we're responsible people here. We like the links. Here we go. The head of the inquiry. This is the inquiry into the Catholic abuse in France. The head of the inquiry said there were at least 2,900 to 3,200 abusers and accused the church of showing a cruel indifference towards the victims. Pope Francis felt pain on hearing about the inquiry's finding. A Vatican statement said one of those abused said it was time for the church to reassess its actions. Francis DeVoe, who is also the founder of the Victims Association, La Parole Libérée, Freed Speech, said there had been a betrayal of trust, betrayal of morale, betrayal of children. Who would have? I'm just going to go on. The inquiry found the number of children abused in France could rise up to 330,000 when taking into account abuses committed by lay members of the church, such as teachers at Catholic schools. For Mr. DeVoe, it marked a turning point in France's history. You have finally given institutional recognition to victims of all the church's responsibility, something that bishops and the Pope have not yet been prepared to do. And I just want to say, job well done to John Hudson. I believe it was John Hudson in the chat saying that number, that 216,000 number, it's pretty low. It seems pretty low. And you're right, John Hudson, because we know this is abuse covering from, 1950 onward? The independent inquiry was commissioned by the French Catholic Church in 2018. It spent more than 2.5 years combing through court, police, and church records and speaking to victims and witnesses. Most cases assessed by the inquiry are thought to be too old to prosecute under French law. Isn't that funny that they decided to do a look into their misdeeds when they know that they can't be charged? Now, if you think that's a dirty trick, you don't know. If you've looked at the description and you clicked on the link to the second story, you will see that the Catholic Church is has a whole bag of dirty tricks, to make sure people don't get paid, victims don't get paid, victims get silenced. I'm just going to continue. Victims were not believed. The report, which is nearly 2,500 pages long, said the vast majority of victims were boys, many of them aged between 10 and 13. It said the church had not only failed to prevent abuse, but had also failed to report it, at times knowingly putting children in contact with predators. There was a whole bunch of negligence, of deficiency, of silence, and institutional cover-up. The head of the inquiry, Jean Maxov, told reporters on Tuesday, he said that until the early 2000s, the church had shown deep, total, and even cruel indifference towards victims. I'm just going to pause for a minute here. And when I was going over these stories today, I thought of Cato the Censor. He not related to Cato the Younger, but Cato the Censor was a Roman senator. Not a great guy, I mean, he was a conservative Roman senator. But whenever he talked about Carthage, Rome's enemy, traditional enemy, he would end every single speech with saying, and I'm just abbreviating this, Carthage must be destroyed. Not a very subtle one, Cato the Censor. I feel that after reading every single panel of this, I should be saying the Catholic Church must be destroyed. Like not sued into oblivion, but just obliterated, destroyed. Turned into condominiums, maybe, community centers. Let's continue. The victims are not believed, are not listened to. When they are listened to, they are explained to have perhaps contributed to what they had happened to them, he explained. He added that sexual abuse within the Catholic Church continued to be a problem, while the commission found evidence of as many as 3,200 abusers out of a total of 115,000 priests and other clerics. It said this was probably an underestimation. Right. Probably an underestimation. The Catholic Church is, after a circle of family and friends, the environment that has the highest prevalence of sexual violence, the report said. We've talked about this many times on this channel, that it isn't strangers who are most likely to abuse your children, or your kid. It is family members. And it turns out that right after that, it's the Catholic Church. They are the ones most likely to abuse your kids after friends and family. Olivier Sagnac, I just butchered his name, I'm sorry, head of the Victims Association, Speak Out and Live Again, was abused at the age of 13 by the director of a Catholic holiday camp in the south of France. He told the Associated Press news agency that before the abuse, he had thought of priests as someone who was good, a caring person who would not harm me. We keep this. It's like a growing cyst. It's like gangrene inside the victim's body and the victim's psyche, he said. The inquiry found that about 60% of the men and women who were abused had gone on to encounter major problems in their emotional or sexual lives. The Catholic Church must be destroyed. To paraphrase Cato the Censor. So, you think that everything we just covered is mind-blowing? That's going to get you the angers. This sentence, which is going to segue into the next story, is this. The French Church had previously announced a plan for financial contributions to victims beginning the next year. So, why Microphone. I need to talk to someone about this microphone. Microphone. Why would the Catholic Church have a plan about paying victims back when it's the victims and the state who should be telling the Catholic Church how much they should pay? If the Catholic Church are the abusers over decades, and let's face it, centuries, why would the abusers dictate the terms of remuneration? Why would the abusers tell the abused how much they're going to get for their pain? What? That's religious privilege right there. That's because people are brainwashed by the Catholic Church, which must be destroyed, right? The Catholic microphone agrees with me that the Catholic Church must be destroyed. And if I haven't convinced you of that, the next story will push that point a little bit stronger. I'm going to put microphone down. I'm going to recenter myself and check out what the chat's up to. Dee Parks, good morning. This is the tip of the iceberg. I'm hoping it all comes out. It's time for accountability. It does. Accountability, exactly. And this is what's going on in France, a country that has a functioning state. Can you imagine what's going on in sub-Saharan Africa? Can you imagine what's going on in South America, where the state may not be as powerful? They want to limit their damages. Oh my, you are so true, KCA Randy. And when we look at the next story by Hemet Mehta, the friendly atheist, when you look at the dirty tricks the Catholic Church plays to keep people silenced and not to pay victims, it's crazy. Yes, Grand Farmer, glad to see you here. Liquidate the church, do good with their resources. Exactly. With their yes, with their resources that they built up, with their golden crosses, with their golden chalices. Tesla Ranger. At least you put a smile on my face, Tesla Ranger. Make Rome great again. Indeed, sir. KCA Randy points out no other organization, or at least one not tied to God, would be allowed to leave a string of victims like this and still exist. Yeah, there's a comedian, I forget who it is, maybe someone can remind me, that mentioned that if Chuck E. Cheese abused kids like the Catholic Church does, Chuck E. Cheese would be out of business. Let's see. Good morning, Cryptameria. And of course, remember Sammy Jenkins. What? The Church of Heretics? Jimmy Lou is here? Good morning, Jimmy Lou. You see me having a meltdown here over this story. Well, you know, remember Sammy Jenkins? Why does any country have a statute of limitations on things like child abuse? That's a very good question, sir. Could it be that the abusers, institutional abusers, have influenced the political systems for their end? Oh, and I know I keep teasing the next story, but it's so, okay, I'm looking at the time and I have to get to the next story. What's up, Simply Secular Dave? And Simply Secular Dave, who of course is from Canada. If you know, you probably know this. All right, you ready to buckle up for the second story, everyone? Before we go into this story about Canada and how the Catholic Church is rigging the system against victims of the residential schools, a story that we have been covering over the last few weeks, maybe months at this point. Please hit like, subscribe. There are no ads here. You know, this is funded by YouTube members, patrons, and thanks. I'm going to say thanks, but let's do this thing. What's up, Dr. Mordecai? So you just popped in. I don't know. Maybe you've been here for a while. Okay, so after seeing that 216,000 children in France were victims of the Catholic clergy, and that is a small number, let's check out what the church is doing or has done in Canada. This is from Hemet Mehta, the friendly atheist, link in the description below. The Catholic Church screwed over residential school victims by legal trickery. Now, if you recall, in the last story, I pointed out that the church has announced plans, and I hate doing air quotes because I feel it's hacky, but they have plans to remunerate victims, and I call bullshit on their plans. And then unless they are sued into the Stone Age, like they were here in Boston, then you cannot trust the church to pay, voluntarily pay. They must be compelled. All right, here we go. So I'm jumping into the story. We know about the residential school horrors, about the bodies being found on the grounds of the residential schools in Canada. We also know that the Catholic Church has never apologized for their role in that tragedy because they ran most of those schools. We also know that the Protestant Church already apologized for its roles back in the freaking 80s. They already apologized. Catholic Church has never apologized for their role with them killing and abusing Indigenous peoples' children. Okay. But wait, there's more. There's another aspect of the story that is also disturbing. In 2005, and yeah, I know we covered this before microphone, but we have to go over this because people might be just tuning in and didn't see that last episode. In 2005, the Canadian government reached a deal with the Indigenous people in the country who had gone to those residential schools. Part of the Indian residential school settlement involved the Catholic Church raising $25 million that would go towards healing programs for survivors. They raised less than $4 million. Only about half of that went toward the stated purpose. And then, in 2015, a judge agreed with the church's argument that they had done their best to raise the money and essentially gave the church a blank slate. They didn't have to pay anything more into the settlement fund. So they promised $25 million, they put in $4 million, and then the judge said, okie dokie smoky, you're done. The $29 million that they still owed residential school survivors erased. The $25 million for healing programs, of which they raised under $4 million, suspended. The $25 million they claim to have already given in-kind compensation to survivors, hidden from public scrutiny. If all that happened in 2015, why did it suddenly become relevant over the summer? Because CBC News learned that the Catholic Church had raised nearly $300 million for new buildings since 2005. That included $128 million for the renovations of St. Michael's Cathedral Basilica in Toronto. All of this we already covered. We already covered all of this weeks ago. The new part is forthcoming. We know that the Catholic Church spent over, so here's the new information, everyone. I just want to make sure I got the right panels down here. Now here's the new bombshell. Here it comes. The CBC News and the Globe and Mail went to court over the summer demanding a release of all the documents in connection with the 2015 decision. Because so much of the case has not been made public, no one knew how the Catholic Church got such a sweetheart deal. The public, and especially residential school survivors, deserve to know more. The same judge who issued the decision in 2015 heard this recent appeal, and perhaps shockingly, he agreed to make the documents public. So the documents about the sweetheart deal were not known until recently. We know that the Catholic Church spent over $6 million fighting for the result they wanted. Rather than compensate victims for what they endured, the church decided to throw in millions for legal fees, administration, internal loans, and other expenses, all to make sure the victims received next to nothing. Canada was never informed of this conflict of interest. No other church organization has claimed legal expenses, never mind legal expenses of $2.7 million. Senior federal government analyst Pamela Stellick stated in a 2014 affidavit contained in the package released last month. We also know church officials involved in making sure victims received the money they were owed incurred expenses like travel and lodging. Instead of getting the church to pay for those funds, they tried getting reimbursed from the pot of money meant for the victims. Here's another troubling revelation. The $25 million the church said it had already paid in kind compensation to survivors. According to the survivors, many of the services were nothing more than attempts to evangelize and convert indigenous people. I'm going to read it again for people in the cheap seats out back. The $25 million the church said it had already paid in kind to the survivors. These services were nothing more than attempts to evangelize and convert indigenous people. They included Bible studies and paying for priests and nuns to serve in various capacities in indigenous communities. There are so many unanswered questions about the settlement, but the bottom line is that the Catholic Church screwed over indigenous people for decades. And when they were finally supposed to be held accountable for it, they screwed them over again. They did it with the help of the justice system. Despite the Vatican's bottomless pit of money, when it comes to people who suffer at the hands of Catholic officials, the church always seems to find a way out of it. The Catholic Church must be destroyed down to the most minute particle, to the smallest iota, everywhere. Because once again, if this is the crap that they're pulling in countries that have functional states with functional juries, with functional, governments, what are they doing in places where they are given free rein? I think we know the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. This is the crap they did in the past. They are actively doing it now, as in abusing children, because they know that they will never have to pay for it. All right, checking out the chat. It is Cryptameria. It's mind-bogglingly criminal. So when we talk about the Catholic Church being a criminal enterprise, it is a criminal enterprise. It is an international criminal enterprise of pedophiles that protect pedophiles and protect themselves. They protect the institution of the church, and they don't care about victims. They don't care. And that's what happens when you put God above all. That's what happens. Hitchens said religion poisons everything. When you put your eyes onto the next life, you ignore this life, or this life doesn't seem that important, you start seeing people as things. All right. Speechless for the first time probably ever. I was aware of the first story about the French story, obviously. I knew the data dump was coming, but I just happened upon this second piece from Heathen, and checking out the chat. Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Our parish transferred a known pedophile from another church. For some odd reason, in mid-year, he took over, the boys, PE. He took, yep, yeah. I tell you, Cardinal Law, who was here in Boston during the pedophile fiasco here, he was shipped out of Boston secretly, sent to the Vatican, where he was given his own church to tend. These are the enablers of pedophiles that we're dealing with. These are the enablers of pedophiles. The ones who are pedophiles, these are the people in the church, and these are the ones that, are against women's rights, right? They're against gay marriage. They are against so many things, and yet they're here to tell us that we're the immoral ones. All right. I'm going to see if I am caught up with the chat. Oh, it's already 25 minutes, and I got to stop because we're doing the after party, after show at 9:30. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna center myself because I feel like I can rage about this for quite a while. I'm gonna show you something funny because I don't want to leave you all with these feels, right? I don't want to. So I'm gonna do something funny, and then if you want to show up for the after party, after show, if you want to be on the panel, links are in the description, everyone. So something funny. I know, microphone. We're going to end the show with something positive. A raccoon eating cereal from a bag. How awesome is that? What's that? That raccoon wouldn't fucking put up with the Catholic Church either? Well, you're right about that. All right. Thank you, YouTube members. Thank you, patrons. I'm going to throw down the thank you video, and then I'll see you at 9:30, which is apparently like less than 3 minutes away. Take care.